Thanks, guys. So anyway, one of the things about cancer is you tend to lose a lot of self-confidence. And I wasn't going to cry at the very beginning, but I was thinking, oh, how do I get my self-confidence back to kind of start this morning? And I thought I'd introduce myself. My name is Alexis. I've had cancer, and I'm 92 years old. So, so that's where you go, whoa. I go, wow, I feel good. You know, I'm 92 years old. Anyway, I just want to say thank you very much, and just the opportunity to be here and be able to thank you people personally. For me, you actually are my firefighters, and you actually saved me from the burning flame, and I mean that fairly literally. One of the things, I've been in the financial industry for about 30 years, 30 plus years actually, and I'm a chief compliance officer for a brokerage firm. And one of the things that I've noticed in the cancer industry and when I went through cancer treatment is that the compassion, the kindness, the love that I received, and the fact that people really made me believe that my life was worth fighting for. Now, for me, this is in direct opposition to what I do for a living, because I spend my time patiently letting people know that I'm actually here to protect them, to help them, to make sure that they don't violate any state or federal statutes. And for them, I am merely killing all of their hopes and dreams. So it's kind of fabulous to spend a little more time here. But I've had cancer twice, and I'm going to give you a little idea of my thinking, my process, and kind of my experience and what happened and how I ended up doing CyberKnife treatment. I was diagnosed the first time back in May of 2004. And for me, it's like I expected a lot of punches in life. I mean, you just get them. I mean, that's the way life is. But for me, cancer had this incredibly mean left hook. I didn't expect it. I was in the best shape of my life. I had no medical issues. And I just knew that cancer was the one thing I would never, ever get. I knew it. And here I was with cancer. And I found the first cancer. And to be a little bold here, I had just, you know, I had noticed I had this little bend in my nipple, and it just kept happening. And so one day I thought, okay, I've got to straighten this sucker out. This just doesn't look right. And behind it, I found this small little lump. So I remember the call after I had my biopsy, and I picked up the phone, and it was just, you know, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It was like, who are you? And it was the doctor who'd done the biopsy. And they gave me some names for some surgeons, and I think at the point they gave me those names, it was like everything went out of control at that point, because I just went, I don't know how to deal with surgeons. I don't know what to do. It's like, I'd never known anybody with cancer before. And to me, cancer was just a death sentence. So, of course, it turned out not to be just a little lump at the front. It turned out to be, I had 3 different sites. It was in the back wall. It was growing into the blood vessels, or at least they were growing blood vessels themselves. And so it turned out to be fairly serious. And it actually was, it was one of those things like if something could go wrong, it went wrong. And every time I got a piece of news, it was just worse and worse. And so it was diagnosed with stage 3B. So, and then they were worried about these cancer cells potentially because it was so close to the chest wall, roaming, you know, inside my body. So, so they put me on this very, very intense regimen of chemotherapy. It was a weekly regimen. It was supposed to last, actually, I think for about 9 months. And the other thing that I had found out also, as I was coming out from under anesthesia from my mastectomy, was that it was also in my lymphs. So we did this very intense chemotherapy. And, you know, I think the shock was I was feeling so healthy, and within the matter of like 3 weeks, I was miserably ill. You know, and like I said, it's like, if it could go wrong, it went wrong. So, and I won't even list all the things that went wrong. It's just like, I just didn't tolerate the chemo well, and things were going poorly. And I was sitting in a chair at home one evening. It was probably my favorite cancer chair, which I refuse to sit in anymore. And I could feel my body actually shutting down. And I knew it was shutting down. And I thought, this is it. This is it. And I just sat there for a long time. I thought, what am I going to do? Can't call the hospital. You know, what are they going to do? You know. And then all of a sudden I went, no. And it was funny, and I didn't say it quite that nicely. But it was sort of like, no way. I thought, I will die from anything. I will die. I can walk out this house this second, if I could have been walking right then. I can walk out this house. I will get hit by a bus. I will get hit by a car. I will do anything, but I will never die of cancer. And that was just an absolutely turning point for me in my life. I just didn't do it. So we actually did have to stop the treatment because my body couldn't tolerate it. But one of the things that they told me at the time was, it's okay. If you have a bad time with chemo, usually you do really well with radiation. No, I did not do well with radiation. We did full breast radiation, because that was kind of the option for me at the time, and I literally burned and burned and burned. And the skin cracked, and it oozed. And I was absolutely fried. And it turned out we had to stop treatment early there too, because I turned out to be in one of the top, 10, 15%. Can't remember the exact thing of burn victims. So at one point, actually, I was so miserable from all this chemo, and I was burned, and I hurt, and it was awful. I was walking to the cancer center, and this woman stopped me on the street as I was trying to go in the Cancer Institute. And she was trying to get money from me. And I said, this really isn't a good time. You can't do this. And she just was insistent. And finally, it was so insistent, and I was so frustrated. And I just took my shirt right there on the street, and I just ripped it open. And I said, your life is worse than this right now? That was it. So she left. It was sort of, okay. So, and for me, it's like I actually had serious doubts about the radiation from the time they actually laid me on the table. And they actually permanently marked me with this little dot that looked like a blackhead on my chest. And I was devastated with this little marker. And I was thinking, okay, why is this such a big deal? I have no breast, I'm disfigured, I'm flat on one side. But to me, that was surgery. And for me, this little black dot was like poor hygiene, and I just didn't want anybody to think I had poor hygiene. So it was just like one more insult to my body and to my self-esteem. So, one side note here, it was funny because everybody had said that when you have cancer, you've got to remain really positive. That's how you're going to live. Well, I wasn't. I wasn't very positive during cancer. In fact, most of my friends and relatives and coworkers thought I was going to die, which is kind of an idea of how cheerful I wasn't. But, and it wasn't like I was moaning all the time because I wasn't, but when I compared myself to some of the other people I knew who were very cheery, uplifting their friends, doing all this thing, it was like, yeah, I felt a little guilty. But what was interesting is that a lot of them didn't make it, and I did. I fought like crazy, and I made it. So I did do a lot of, even though I wasn't the brightest and sunniest person on the planet, I did do a lot of things to get me through cancer. And one of them was, I wanted to remember where I came from. And I didn't have a lot of pictures. We'd grown up, and we'd had a fire, and so there wasn't much. So I actually went to my relatives to find pictures of things to remember where I came from. And one of the ones I found, this is actually my parents. And it was like, oh, there they were young. And this is me as a baby. So that was this great thing. I put it up to just remember, yeah, that was kind of cute and alive. And then I found these other pictures that were really sweet. And this is just me as a young kid, which I wanted to remember with my grandparents. And it was just little pictures. And this is me. This is my shot like when I was sexy. I was once sexy. So I wanted to remember that. because I didn't feel it anymore. And the other thing we did is before I had my mastectomy, we had a big breast party. I had a cast done of the breast that I was going to lose, and we had, all my friends were over, and we did a big painting, and I still have them. They're supposed to be an installation. I haven't finished it. And this is one of the pieces that we did, or working on. And this is, I love wine. So we did a whole thing. This is a cheap bottle of wine, but you would have thought I'd give myself a little bit better. And this is actually me just a couple days before I actually had the surgery. And I wanted to remember. I just thought, keep holding on to those images. And this is a box I actually made. I did a lot of art therapy. I did music therapy. I did everything. I was in support groups. I was doing everything. And this is a little cancer box that I made with little torn up pieces of paper to remind me of positive things that happened during cancer. So I was positive a little bit. And this is a piece of artwork I did that was to remind me, in art therapy, to remind me what life would be like if I didn't have cancer or without cancer. And then I went swimming with the dolphins afterwards to celebrate. A lot of good food, and this was a fabulous food. Sear on the scallops is amazing. And bungee jumped, did a bunch of bungee jumping. So this happened to be up at Whistler. So that was fabulous. Oh, and then there's a lot of things that I couldn't do afterwards, so I actually took up lawn bowling. It was one of the few things that I actually could do. So, by the way, I'm very excited to go to Australia and compete there. And this is me actually winning. And the best thing that happened also during this time was I actually was able to, with a partner, win the novice championship for our club up in Seattle. So that was pretty exciting. So that was kind of my first time through. All right, second time through. Oh, the other interesting thing I was going to say is about the positivity is I actually had a therapist at the time who had actually suggested while I went through cancer, why don't you just sit, look at the flowers, do all that kind of thing. And I came back, I was so irritated, and I just said, you know what, my flowers have bees on them, and I'm allergic to bees. So that was kind of the first time. So, and it probably took me about 2 years to get my life back, and then time passed, and I had breast reconstruction, I had a free flap, I did all of that. And I actually had my hip done. The bone had shrunk during cancer. We got that done. And I was thinking, okay, life's pretty good. I'm gonna live. This is all great. I'm about 8 years out now from the time of diagnosis. Everything's great. I'm on the way to my orthopedist. And I'm at a stop sign and my phone rings. And it was my oncologist. And I just said, don't call me. Do not call me. You don't call with good news. So the next day I was in for a biopsy. And it was cancer again. This time it was smaller. It was in situ. And they said surgery and radiation. And I thought, surgery, I can do. I've gotten good with the surgeons now. I've had a lot of surgeries since the beginning. But I just couldn't do radiation again. I just went, no, I can't do this. I cannot go through that burn. I will not put my body through this. It's not right. It would be cruel. So I was talking to a friend, and just a casual friend, happens to work for the University of Washington up there. And she said, I was telling her this dilemma I had about radiation. I said, I can't do it. I said, I'll die first. I'll die before I'll do this radiation again. And she said, did you know that they're doing CyberKnife for breast now? They're looking at it. In Seattle? Yep. Is Sandy Vermeulen doing it? Yep. Who I knew from before. And I said, it's Swedish? Yep. And I just went goodbye. So I got on the phone with my surgeon. We got an appointment, and we had a real time constraint here because this was, at the beginning of December of this last year, and we had a very short window to do things. So I met with my surgeon, and I said, have you heard about the CyberKnife? Could we do this thing? And she just happened to be, it was Dr. Dawson, she just happened to have worked with Dr. Vermeulen with some of the breast studies that they were doing around the CyberKnife. And she said, well, go meet with Dr. Vermeulen, which I did. She explained all the different radiation, all the different protocols, all the side effects and this. And again, we didn't know if we could get it approved through insurance. So I said, okay, let's do this thing. She had the fiducials. Get them up to my surgeon. We'll make an appointment. Let's do the surgery. Let's hope that this thing works. And for me, I had to make the decision because I was told by the surgeon, if this did not work, that I would lose my whole other breast. That was the only way to go. And I had nothing left to reconstruct with. There's several reasons why I don't have that, but it was like, I went through all this trouble, you know, to get the one breast reconstructed, and where am I gonna be? So that was probably the toughest, is knowing that if this thing didn't work, and she was saying, if you do full breast radiation, you know, chances is you're gonna save your breast. And I looked at this and I went, okay, this was high grade, high nuclear grade. My understanding was the cells were more tightly wound, less chance of migration. And I just thought, I can't do this. And it was in situ. I thought, it's contained. So I just went, screw it. This is worth the risk to me. I know they haven't done a lot of this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I was still scared. I think the most amazing thing about the CyberKnife for me is they knew I was anxious, and because of my first thing. So they actually took me in to show me the room. And I went back to work that day. And I said, oh my God, this CyberKnife is amazing. It's like 2 stories tall. I mean, this is, you know, this is why witness, you know, testimony is never very reliable. And, and I actually had the CEO of our firm said, I've looked at the picture. It doesn't look that big. Yeah, so anyway, but the first couple days I was very nervous. The techs, everybody was lovely. We had to squeeze it into an incredibly short period of time. We had 5 days to do this thing. And so we had to do it twice a day for 5 days. And ice in between to keep the breast and the swelling. But I will tell you this, it was after the second day, and there was still no burning, that was 4 treatments. And we went through it, and on the very last day, they couldn't get the stuff to line up. And I just went, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I'm gonna have to stop short again. One more time, I'm not gonna get my full treatment. We got the afternoon treatment in, and the doctor came to me and she said she and the tech were gonna come in on Saturday, New Year's Eve, this last year. And they came in on New Year's Eve. I brought them lots of wine and chocolate. And we finished the last treatment. And I will tell you that there was not a burn. There was nothing. And I think for me, the big difference was too, because one of my reoccurring thoughts during the first cancer is how absolutely barbaric cancer treatment was. I couldn't believe it. It was like I was on rawhide. And I don't know if anybody knows the old 60s TV show. But I mean, literally, it was like I was out on the cattle trail drive. You know, it was like I had a diseased limb. They threw some whiskey down my throat, gave me leather to chew on. They chopped it off. And you know, Wishbone, the cook, takes the frying pan and cauterizes me. And I'm serious, it is 8 years, you know, since my first cancer. And it's like, I can't get that image out of my mind. And it's like with CyberKnife, I had a woman that was sitting there in the waiting room terrified. And she said, she was so scared. She had a spot or 2 on her lung, excuse me. She had a spot or 2 on her lung, and she was so scared. And I said, this is the easiest thing you'll ever do. This is the easiest thing you'll ever do. You will go in there, you will lay on a table, you will be fully clothed. You will have no people milling about looking at your exposed body. There is no embarrassment. You get to save, and you get to have your dignity. I said, you will walk out of there and you will go, really, this is it? This is cancer treatment? And I think the toughest part about cancer the first time for me was I had to give up my dignity to save my life. And I didn't with this. So for me, that's why you are my firefighters. You truly, truly saved me from that burning flame. So thank you very much.